Joe Rogan is one of the most famous people on the planet. From being a successful comedian, a commentator for the UFC, and hosting the world's biggest podcast, Joe has everybody's eyes on him. And with this attention, you're bound to have some run-ins with people who disagree with you, especially when you hold the strong opinions he has. With one of his first public feuds being against a bitter boxing promoter. Back in 2007, the UFC was only 14 years old, and many people were opposed to it, like the former United States Senator John McCain, who referred to the sport as human cockfighting. Another person who referred to the sport the same way was boxing promoter DiBella. Joe Rogan, the famous UFC commentator, would appear on ESPN and debate DiBella on the selected sports. Lou would immediately go on the offensive on his personal thoughts about the UFC.
Yeah, but it's, you know, it's sort of like human cockfighting in my view, or pit bull fighting. Guys are elbowing each other to the heads, guys are kneeing each other. They get into leg locks and start rolling around on the ground.
Joe Rogan would clap back on the human cockfighting claims.
How is that human? How is that human cockfighting? You know what that is? That's actual fighting. You know what boxing is? Well, boxing is a very limited form of fighting. It's kind of a silly agreement. Say like, we hate each other, we're gonna fight, we're gonna duke it out man to man, but we're only gonna use our hands. That's it.
Lou would question if Joe Rogan was an actual fan of boxing, where Joe would destroy him with logic.
All the beautiful moves that Pernell Whitaker and James Toney and some of those. Well, I'm a boxing fan. I love boxing.
No, you're not a
and,
boxing
I mean,
fan.
There's some great. Yes, how do you say I'm not a boxing fan?
Because you don't get it. It's a science. Defense is as important as offense. Guys like you would never
totally
care
understand.
about Willie Pep or Pernell Whitaker or Floyd Mayweather.
First of all, you're wrong. I just said Pernell Whitaker. You don't know me, and you don't know what I'm a fan of. I am a fan of boxing. It's a beautiful sport, but it's a sport that encompasses one aspect of fighting. What ultimate fighting is a sport of fighting. What you guys don't understand, you guys are a dying breed. You boxing guys, oh, it's humans cockfighting. What you don't understand is your sport is getting swallowed. It's getting swallowed by a greater, more efficient,
BS.
more spectacular sport.
And although they disagreed, Joe Rogan would hilariously end the interview with this comment.
Lou DiBella,
I love you. Big kiss.
Wow.
Take care, Joe.
Let's go through some history here.
Joe Rogan was correct when it came to UFC taking over boxing. And a whole decade later, while doing an interview with Ariel Helwani, Lou DiBella would reflect on his comments and partially change his mind.
In the past, I've had some unkind things to say about MMA, but I mean, I think I've begun to get it a little more as a discipline. I still would probably get into an argument with Joe Rogan if we hung out together, but maybe not if we had a couple of drinks or something beforehand.
And although Joe would have feuds with people within the sport of boxing, he would also get into it with people from his own sport of MMA. While at a Q&A event in Chicago, Conor McGregor's partial dislike for Joe Rogan would become apparent when he mentioned how he wasn't a fan of Joe's commentary during both the Khabib and Nate Diaz fights. Conor would say, quote, "I'd like him to call a fight how he sees it correctly, and not be reading off a script though. That Diaz rematch, it was like he was reading from the first fight, and the last one against Nurmagomedov, he was talking about how my face was being smashed in. I left that octagon with a black eye, the same way his two rat cousins left. His brother and his cousin left the octagon with a black eye, so what is he talking about?" When Joe Rogan would catch wind of this, he would respond to Conor while on his famous podcast.
I get his position. You know, that Diaz fight was a good fight, man. It was a hard fight. I wasn't calling it like the last fight, but I had to call it with the knowledge of the last fight. And I think that guy is one of the most dynamic individuals to ever compete in the sport. He's a special person.
And although Joe Rogan took this criticism well, Conor would hilariously double down on his biased commentary claim a few years later in a now deleted Twitter voice message.
That was an illegal knee on the head of a grounded opponent. Shut up, Joe, you little fool, yeah. What are you talking about? Smash this and smash that. What was smashed? My knee into his fucking eye socket, yeah? Sake. That's a knee to a grounded opponent. Call the cops. Fucking ticket.
Joe wouldn't respond directly to this message, but would mention Conor's new physique on his podcast with more plates, more dates, and allude to him probably taking performance-enhancing drugs to get into his current shape, by saying, "He's taking his shirt off and posing constantly, and he looks like his piss would melt that USADA cup." Conor would clap back to these claims in another Twitter post, where he would show Joe Rogan's physique when he was 25 and when he was 52, and say, "Joe looks like his piss melts his knickers. In the company that long and never took a fight. Oh, taekwondo competition, call the cops." Joe would yet again take this on the chin and have this to say to Conor.
That's hilarious. Conor got mad because I said that his piss looked like it could melt the USADA cup. And he said it looks like my piss could melt the USADA cup too.
Yeah.
And he's correct.
You're not fighting.
Conor, I'm not hating that. You look great.
Yeah.
And by the way, he does have a legitimate reason for doing whatever the he's doing, even if he's doing nothing. He broke his leg. It's a different thing. Like, it is really hard. And it's very hard for people to come back because that bone always has the potential to be weaker.
However, when the two saw each other at a UFC weigh-in, they seemed like the situation was cool between them and they let bygones be bygones. Unfortunately, this can't be said when it comes to Joe Rogan's famous feud with comedian Carlos Mencia. Joe Rogan first made his problem with Carlos public in 2005 when he released an article on his website titled "Carlos Mencia is a weak-minded joke thief," where he exposed him by saying, "The latest and most disgusting joke thief of all is a guy named Carlos Mencia. The really crazy thing is that that's not even his real name. He sells himself as being Mexican, but the reality is his real name is Ned Holness, and he's actually half German and half Honduran. The Mexican hook is something he did to ingratiate himself with the local Mexican population of LA where he started." Joe would further go into his reasoning for calling out Carlos by saying, "Now normally I wouldn't dedicate so much time to talk about a piece of shit like Ned on my website, but this stupid could talk shit about me on the radio, so it's open season for hacks." A whole 2 years would pass before an in-person altercation would happen, where Joe Rogan would go on stage and confront Carlos about him stealing jokes.
I'm somebody important enough that he had to end the show by saying Carlos been stealing. That's who I am.
You don't know that nobody supports him. You don't know that nobody. If someone steals a riff from a song, that shit's in the news constantly. Motherfuckers steal shit and make it on HBO. They steal shit, they put it on television.
Joe would provide evidence in a video of Carlos stealing a joke from his friend and fellow comedian Ari Shaffir.
Here's this new thing, I don't know if you guys heard this. He wants to build a new wall all down the California-Mexico border. Like a 12-foot high brick wall, it's like 3 feet deep. So no Mexicans get in. But I'm like, dude, Arnold, who do you think is going to build that wall?
I propose that we kick all the illegal aliens out of this country. Then we build a super fence so they can't get back in. And I went, who's going to build it?
At the time, Carlos was a way bigger comedian than Joe, so because of this, Joe was kicked out of the comedy club the confrontation happened at. However, this video would go viral and forever stain Mencia's reputation within the comedy community, and his Comedy Central show, Mind of Mencia, would be cancelled a year later. In the years following, Joe Rogan would explode in popularity, and Mencia would do the complete opposite and decline in popularity massively, with Carlos mentioning this in a recent interview with DJ Vlad.
It's cost me a lot. A lot. It's cost me friendships. It's cost me money.
You were in therapy for a while, right?
Status. It's cost me stature. It's cost so much. When you go from selling, 30,000 seats to selling 2,000 seats, and then 2,000 seats to selling a comedy club out within a period of a year to a year and a half.
And as of 2024, Carlos Mencia still denies his allegations. And although this confrontation was tense, nothing will compare to his altercation with a contestant on Fear Factor. From 2001 to 2006, Joe Rogan hosted the show Fear Factor, which consisted of a small group of people doing sets of challenges in hopes of winning the cash prize at the end of the show. This show would have many interesting contestants, but the most recognizable ones would be an abusive couple by the names of Jonathan and Victoria. While doing a challenge, the husband would berate his wife the whole time.
Victoria, you're gonna lose! Go back there! Damn it! He's close there! Victoria, we're in the lead. You're gonna lose! I can't believe you came back out. I can't believe you came back out. Go! Victoria, go! Go! Victoria, you're gonna lose the race for us.
What, John, please?
Victoria, we're gonna lose!
Okay.
Johnny Fairplay was taunting them the entire challenge just to purely annoy them and make things worse for the couple.
This is dead weight! She's get a new woman! She's dead weight!
After they couldn't complete the challenge, they would return to the others where all hell would break loose.
Over here.
I am not happy.
You're the biggest
Hey, what are you doing? What are you doing? You can't assault people. What are you doing?
Oh, but
it's called
Johnny.
Strategy. He's yelling
That's
at
not
you.
a
You can't
strategy.
run up to him and hit him. Look, if you and your husband hit each other, that's one thing. You don't run up and hit other contestants. No, hey. No.
He got in Joe's face.
And then he got too close to Joe.
Please.
Oh my God.
And then all of a sudden they start going at it. And I was like, all right, I got to break this up because Joe's going to kill him.
Hey.
And we have to...
And although this feud was highly publicized as it was on national television, another feud would gain even more headlines when he would make his dislike for Howard Stern very public. You see, this dislike wasn't always the case. In fact, they were actually quite good friends, with Joe going on Howard's radio show quite regularly. However, things would go slightly sour between the two after they attended a strip club together. According to Stern, while Joe was intoxicated, he allegedly said things that caught the attention of Howard. He was saying stuff to me about the women. He seemed angry, and I said to him, "Sometimes it seems like you're angry with women." But the big problem would be when he aired these accusations out for the whole world to hear and make Joe Rogan look like a giant misogynist.
And then we went over to Club Paradise.
Right away.
And I figured I'd just walk in there and not really know anyone. Everyone was there from the show.
Yeah. Well, I had a big appearance there.
Well, what? You already had an appearance here, and Stuttering John has one there tonight. But Joe Rogan, you see, you try to act like you're above the strip club.
Oh, come on.
How am I trying to act like I'm above it?
You should see this guy's nose.
Trying to act like I'm above it. Well, I mean, you're always like, oh, these girls, they don't like me. They don't like
What are
me.
you talking about?
Yeah?
No such thing.
All right, I thought you would, and then I always see you sitting there.
What are you talking about?
You know what?
You're making this up.
Joe Paradise is perfect.
Joe uses the word whore about 20 times an hour.
He goes, oh, these whores, this and the other. Meanwhile, you love these girls.
I don't say it that way.
You know how affectionately. I think you're angry with women.
But even knowing this confrontation was embarrassing for Joe, nothing would compare to when he would return on Stern's show and be ambushed with a former one-night stand of his to air out more dirty laundry for millions of people to hear.
When did you meet Joe?
It's like at least 7 years ago, right?
Yeah, it was about 6 years ago. 1997. He was my first one-night stand. A wonderful one-night stand. And I got pregnant. And I...
What?
Yeah.
What?
And the thing about it is you have to understand.
What?
Joe, you knocked her out?
Are you kidding?
Did you know that?
Okay, but see, you have to understand. For one, I'm not the type of person who's going to, use something against somebody. And for me, it was kind of like...
How old's your son or daughter?
I never kept it.
Thank you, Jim.
But the final straw for Joe would be when Howard doubled down on the misogyny claims yet again.
It was fun.
It says here, Joe would always yell at the juggies.
Well, no,
Joe hates women.
he has a difficult time.
And Joe's weird. Like
He definitely has a difficult time.
I've gone to strip clubs with him, and he's like, get away from me, you whore.
I remember seeing, even when we were in Vegas together and there were stripper dancers and he was yelling all kinds of horrible things. And I was like, these women aren't doing anything to you. Why are you screaming at them?
Right.
Joe wouldn't ever go on the Howard Stern show again, and a full 3 years would go by before Joe mentioned these stories that paint him in a bad light by saying, "My problem with Howard's version of the story is that it's complete horseshit. I never said getaway whore to anyone," and would mention their friendship by saying, "When the guy turns on you and talks shit about you, especially shit that's not true, it's a gross feeling." However, not much would really be said on the standing of their thoughts of each other until Joe was in the headlines for his comments on the COVID vaccine and how he wanted to stick to other ways of treatment, where Howard would say, "I heard Joe Rogan was saying, 'What are you busting my balls for? I took horse dewormer and a doctor gave it to me.' Well, a doctor would also give you a vaccine, so why take horse dewormer?" Clearly showing that they have disagreements on many issues. Then Joe would briefly mention Stern on his podcast.
Look, people to this day, they make fun of Howard Stern because of who he is now and the way he behaves now. That guy's the man. He was the pioneer. When he was the king of all media, and he was telling everybody to suck his dick, and the FCC was going after him, the government was fining him.
Yeah.
They were fining his businesses millions of dollars.
Yeah.
And he was out there doing wild shit on the radio.
He was putting a Klansman on with Young Thug.
Now he's woke.
And with this feud very likely to not be solved anytime soon, it's just another one of Joe's many disagreements that the public have to bear witness to. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. Was Joe Rogan wrong in any of these situations? And if so, why?